Well, that was more like it. After the disappointment and frustration in Monaco, PSG answered in the best way possible. A 5-0 demolition of Rennes, the informed Ligue 1 team. A game everyone expected to be tricky turned into a real statement win. Intensity, goals, confidence, and finally a performance worthy of European champions. Kvaratskhelia with a brace, Mayulu shining again, Mbaye scoring a beauty for his first of the season, Ramos finishing the party, and overall a squad that clearly benefited from the full week of rest. It wasn't perfect, but it was exactly the reaction we needed. And today we're breaking down what worked, what still needs work, and what this means heading into Bilbao. So, 5-0 against Rennes, La Manita, like they say in Spanish, a big win. And honestly, like a really like fairly impressive one, I've got to say. We were going into this game, me like everyone else, thinking that, it could be a tricky one against a Rennes team who was on a series of 4 wins in 4 games, who was really on form right now when we weren't. And really like, we turned in like a really strong performance, and it looked like Champions League PSG, and not so much Ligue 1 PSG, and clearly that makes all the difference in the world. Against a team of Rennes who still played their game. I think like the scoreline is a bit wide. They had a red card on the 75th minute, and so we scored 2 goals after that. So ultimately, maybe 5-0 is just like also giving a little bit of a wrong impression. But yes, that Rennes team in the first half in particular, like the first 30 minutes, really try to play their game, try to press fairly high on the pitch, try to break away very, very fast every time they got the chance. And so, credit to us that we managed to turn in a performance that's strong enough to score 5 goals against this team. And yeah, with something really working well, that we want to be calling out. The first one I wanted to talk about, and like this one, honestly, like it goes back to some of the comments that I've been getting on past videos, because I've seen on my videos and in general a lot of chatter about the mentality of this PSG team. And how maybe it was a bit lacking, maybe weren't really like as involved as willing to get stuck in and dirty to get the wins. And I think, for me, I always thought that the troubles that we were having so far this season were really more an indication of physicals and fitness that was lacking more than any sort of mental trouble. And I really feel like slightly proven right by this. I think the week off that we had between the Monaco game and the Rennes game clearly did a lot of good. And when you see the physical intensity that we managed to put in this Rennes game, the amount of runs, the amount of movement, the amount of switching positions and so on, even like just the pure physical impact that we put in the duel, all of a sudden you see a PSG team that's 1, 2, 3 notches above where it was against Monaco. And I think, even against an on-form team in Ligue 1, I think versus any team in Ligue 1, it makes enough of a difference that all of a sudden there's no real chance of anything happening. And we just we dominate the game. And I think, if you look at the end of the 2 halves, the end of the first half, like after the second goal, like the last 5 minutes, Rennes is like just not doing anything. They're just trying to not concede anymore before halftime. And obviously, like the last 15 minutes of the game after they get that red card, PSG is completely dominating. We're scoring 2 more goals and so on. And so for me, that's really like a clear indication of, fitness all of a sudden being there again. I don't know how long it's going to last, obviously. I think like the rest, it's good for this game, but now we have a Champions League game in 3 days and another game 3 days after, and so on and so forth. So it's not, it's not like we flip the switch and it's going to turn everything around. But for one game, it's really good to see that, we haven't forgotten like the way of playing. We haven't forgotten like the intensity that we're supposed to put in. We haven't forgotten like the movement that like the players are supposed to do. And so all of those things, Luis Enrique often talks when in his press conference about like principles that are supposed to remain whoever is on the pitch. I think that was a great example of this. And ultimately, like as we get more starters returning and maybe, more fitness after a Christmas break or whatever, hopefully we can get back to closer, at least to the levels that we had last season. And I think that's, or even higher actually. So that's a really good sign for me. And yeah, like I think in terms of mentality, just to go back to this, yeah, it shows, and it shows in this game again that at 3-0 and with like one of their players down and them like being nowhere in the game, we keep on going and we score 2 more goals and we want to, the win is not enough. We want to make a statement and we win 5-0 in the end. And so I think that speaks to that, is that like, yeah, we are a team that wants a win always, just like wants nothing to do with losing. First, we want to win, and we want to win as big as possible, and we want to hurt our opponents. And it's clearly what happened in this game. And I think it was nice to see this PSG back again. In terms of the top players, like couples that really stood out for me. First, like Kvaratskhelia, 2 goals, and really turn in a big performance that we had been waiting for a while. We kept saying that he was typically more involved when Champions League time came. This time for a Liga game, he really turned it on. Not everything was perfect. I think there were still a couple of times where he doesn't necessarily always like make the right decision and so on. But yeah, like a really strong Kvara, a lot of activity on the left flank, a lot of runs, a lot of provocation. He essentially destroyed the Rennes right fullback Frankowski, who's not a bad player, but just got like way in over his head on this one. And so yeah, with 2 goals, it's great to see. Hopefully, it's the kind of form that he can keep going. But it's the kind of Kvara that we want to see. Simple as. It's not a pie in the sky Kvara. We know he's capable of that. We know he's capable of turning in performance flows like this week in, week out. That should be like the level that he's at regularly. So it's great to see him play at that level in a Liga game, and hopefully it's a sign of good things to come. And then the second one, who I wanted to talk about maybe a bit longer, is Warren Zaïre-Emery, who once again was playing on the right flank in that Hakimi sort of like mixed Hakimi role of playing the right flank of defense, but also like coming into the midfield quite often. And first, Zaïre-Emery is clearly like, it's been happening for a few weeks now, and like we've seen it, he's back on top, and that's great to see because that's a player that I really like, and like I've always try to avoid criticizing because talent speaks in the end, and it's clearly what's happening here. He's got the level of physical impact that he brings and the level of coverage that he brings is incredible. And the fact is that he essentially like shut down their left winger and then like went into the midfield and managed to hurt and create and make runs all the way to the middle of their defense. And so it was really like funny, but like a vintage Hakimi performance, exactly what Hakimi does essentially. And so for me, it kind of brings me to my overall point, and like the debate that keeps on happening. But why in the hell would we want to like bring in a substitute for Hakimi when like clearly like Zaïre-Emery is doing it very well now, and he's really like not only like on the defensive side, but in really bringing to life all of the elements of the games that Hakimi does. And all of the facets of the Hakimi role, both in terms of defending the right flank, jumping into midfield, making runs from on deep to create chances and breaches in the opposition's defense, and even finding himself in position to score goals, which happens again with Zaïre-Emery. It's like, I'm sorry, but why? I mean, why? Like, is literally like turning in a great performance and a great impression of Hakimi. And I don't see, honestly, like, I do not see any players right now anywhere else who can turn in this sort of performance. And so, I think it's high time. I've been saying it ever since I started this channel, but it's high time that people stop thinking of football in terms of, FIFA or Football Manager or whatever it might be. Hakimi is not just a right back. He contributes in a lot of different ways, and the best way of replacing him and replacing all of the elements that he brings to the table is with Zaire Emery, and we need to get on with it. And yes, Zaire Emery wasn't always at his best, but now that he's back at his best, I challenge anyone to make the point that he's not the best suited to replace Hakimi, because really, that's very, very visible on this game. So great to see from Zaire Emery, and great to see ahead of Bilbao, because obviously he's gonna have a big one ahead of him. Nico Williams is the left winger for Bilbao. Very, very talented player, obviously, and so for Zaire Emery, that's gonna be an even tougher game. So we'll have to see what level he can rise to in this position. So, and finally, bit of a debate. Not really a debate, but great news that Safonov played this game, our Russian substitute goalkeeper, and turned in a very good performance. He had a couple of very impactful saves early on in the game, both just before the opener from Kvara. So when the score was still 0-0, he has an incredible save. And then he has another one, which to me is even better, on a corner kick around the 30th minute when the score is just 1-0. And in both cases, he makes very impactful saves. He doesn't have a whole lot to do besides that. But yeah, distribution was okay, nothing groundbreaking, but fair and good. And he makes the two saves that he needs to make. And so given Chevalier's uneven performances, to say the least, this season, it begs the question of where do we stand? And I think, my personal opinion is that realistically for now, Chevalier is still our starting goalkeeper, and that's not really going to change. Hopefully this performance from Safonov puts a bit of pressure on him and puts him a little bit face-to-face with his own responsibilities and the things that he needs to do better and that he needs to do to be performing in this role. And, in the end, the question mark with Safonov as well is that, sadly, it's not only a Safonov question, it's a Chevalier question, it's a Zabarny question, and it is a Safonov question. And so, to unplug all of those three questions, yeah, Safonov first. Yes, he turns in a good performance against Lens, but it's not like what we saw last year was really out of this world either. So let's be careful to also not make too much of a good game. It's great that he's having a good game. Hopefully we see more of it, but for now it's just a good game, and so let's put that into the proper context as well. On Zabarny, so Zabarny officially was sick and so missed this game. Unofficially cannot play with Safonov, and so it begs into question that if Safonov gets more game time, we've got a 60 million defender that we bought, who admittedly has had also uneven performances, but who cannot be playing. And so I think this one is also a difficulty because Marquinhos has been doing well in the past couple of games, but we want to prepare the future. Zabarny is supposed to be coming in to challenge for the starter's place, and so the question mark is the gap of quality between Chevalier and Safonov enough to justify losing out on what Zabarny can bring to this team? And I think that's a tough one to answer. So yeah, something to also keep in mind and be mindful of. And then ultimately the Chevalier question, which is really the hard one, because yeah, he's made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of what he does is really not at the level that we would want. But we also took him knowing that he was a bet over the long term, that he was a young goalkeeper who needed to learn and so on. And so is it already time to give up on him? I personally don't think so. I think like he's got probably more qualities that allow him over the long term to rise over the level of a Safonov. And I think, once like again, like I said, like this one game is not necessarily representative of what Safonov's level really is. And so we've got to be mindful. We've got to be patient, and we'll have to see. But I think overall, where I'm comfortable is that, like people love saying that Luis Enrique is very dogmatic and doesn't change his mind and so on, which honestly, like I find to be completely like disconnected from reality, because Luis Enrique changes his mind all the time. And if there's one thing about Luis Enrique is that he likes winning. And so like if he needs to change goalkeeper to get there, if he thinks it's the best way to get there, he definitely will. And there's no question about that at all in my mind. So we can debate about like the Luis Enrique of it all. But for me, I think, if Chevalier keeps underperforming, if Safonov keeps overperforming in games and in training, there comes a point where Luis Enrique will take his responsibilities, and like whatever will happen will happen. And I think like I'm very, very comfortable in this, and placing my trust in Luis Enrique to make that decision when it needs to happen. But anyway, this is kind of like the high level debrief from this 5-0 win against Stade Rennais. Big win. See us like keep our second place in Ligue 1, 1 point behind Lens and 4 points clear of Marseille, who managed to lose their game again. So a little bit of a gap opening behind us. Next game in 3 days against Bilbao in the Champions League. We're going to be talking about that very quickly, to hopefully like seal the qualification and keep our spot near the top of the table in the Champions League. And as always, let me know in the comment what you thought of this Rennes game. What do you make of it? Which player impressed you the most? And what do you make of Safonov's performance? Leave a like if you made it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And hit the bell to get notified. And don't forget, as always, ici c'est Paris!